It's 6 p.m. on Tuesday here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Hwang Jae. And these are the top stories we're following at this hour. The two Koreas agreed to raise the minimum wage for North Korean workers at their joint industrial complex by 5%, putting an end to a months-long wage row. Despite China's currency devaluation, experts remain skeptical about the world's second-largest economy reaching its growth target of 7% for this year. Plus, the death toll continues to rise in the aftermath of the deadly bombing near a popular tourist site in Bangkok. More than 20 are reported dead, with around 120 more injured. Our top story this afternoon, the two Koreas have finally agreed on a wage hike for North Korean workers at their joint industrial complex in Kaesong. With the deal, July's wages will be settled under new terms. Our Hyun-bin reports.
After months of wrangling, the two Koreas have finally reached an agreement to increase the wage of North Korean workers at the Kaesong industrial complex in North Korea. Sources close to the matter said on Monday that the two sides decided to raise the minimum wage by 5% to a little less than $74, the same level the wage has been set every year. A unification ministry official says the move is expected to support the stable supply of labor and improve business conditions at the complex. North Korea wanted wages increased by just under 5.2% for its 56,000 workers at the complex. The sources said the two sides will also hold a joint committee meeting to discuss how to revise labor guidelines, and stressed the importance of the consultations by citing its integral role in the wage hike agreement. The agreement was reached amid recently heightened military tensions on the border, where several landmine explosions have been blamed on the north. Pyongyang has denied any part in the blast, refusing to apologize for the two South Korean cadets that were severely injured by the blast. The Kaesong complex, which opened in 2004, is the last remaining vestige of inter-Korean cooperation, and a source of much-needed revenue for the North Korean regime. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
North Korea has resumed broadcasting propaganda along the border against South Korea, but pundits are questioning the effectiveness of Pyongyang's action. Connie Kim has the details.
In response to South Korea's propaganda warfare along the border with the North, North Korea is reported to have resumed its loudspeaker campaign at the military demarcation line for the first time in 11 years. The loudspeakers broadcast messages condemning the South and promoting the reclusive regime. But the effectiveness of Pyongyang's campaign is questionable. An official from Seoul's defense ministry said Tuesday that North Korea's loudspeakers are old and barely audible in the South. Experts say the North's campaign is meant to prevent its people from hearing South Korea's propaganda messages.
South Korea's loudspeaker broadcasts can reach military stationed in the front line and North Koreans living near the borderline. The regime is extremely sensitive of the South's loudspeaker broadcasting, as it can reach all the way to Kaesong.
South Korea mainly broadcasts propaganda related to democracy, news outside of Pyongyang, and even weather. Information experts say could heavily influence North Korean citizens and soldiers. Analysts also say Pyongyang will not be able to do anything more than launch a propaganda campaign, especially at a time when South Korea and the U.S. are holding joint military drills.
North Korea is aware that the United States will fully support South Korea in case of any local war. This is one of the major reasons why Pyongyang can't launch a military provocation.
South Korea's propaganda broadcasts can be heard 24 kilometers away at night and 10 kilometers away during the day. Its campaign is set to further pressure the North as the South Korean military plans to launch mobile loudspeakers along the border. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the U.S. State Department says the joint military drill between Seoul and Washington is about improving alliance capabilities and nothing more. State Department spokesman John Kirby said Monday that the annual exercises are purely defensive in nature. Ahead of the exercises, Pyongyang had threatened to launch its strongest military action against the U.S. if it proceeded with the drills. This year's Ulji Freedom Guardian takes place amid rising tensions on the peninsula following the recent explosion of a North Korean landmine in the DMZ. Amid growing speculations of a three-way summit between Korea, China, and Japan this year, Seoul's foreign ministry says it's pushing for the event and will continue efforts to host a meeting. Hwang Sung-hee takes a closer look at the possible hurdles and progress that's being made to revive the trilateral talks.
Korea's foreign ministry vowed utmost efforts to host a trilateral summit with China and Japan within this year.
As the chair of the Trilateral Cooperation Secretariat, we will continue to play a leading role in the diplomatic efforts for holding a trilateral summit.
Tuesday's statement comes amid speculations that the three neighbors could hold their first summit in more than 3 years as early as October. The biggest hurdle that remains is China, which wants to see Japan fully acknowledge its wartime past. But there has been positive developments in Beijing-Tokyo relations. Compared to their awkward handshake last November, the leaders of the two countries held a much more amicable meeting in April. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will reportedly visit Beijing immediately after China's Victory Day ceremony on September 3rd for another shot at mending ties. Despite a disappointing war anniversary statement by Abe, President Park Geun-hye also stressed the importance of a future-oriented relationship with Japan in her Liberation Day speech.
비록 어려움이 많이 남아 있으나 이제 올바른 역사 인식을 토대로 새로운 미래로 함께 나아가야 할 때입니다.
If President Park attends Beijing's Victory Day ceremony, she is expected to push for the three-way meeting in her talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Experts say a trilateral summit in Seoul will also be a good opportunity to break the ice between Korea and Japan, since President Park will be welcoming Abe to Korea for the first time since they took office. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Discussions over how to redistrict constituencies for next year's general elections resumed this Tuesday, some 3 weeks after the rival parties clashed over how to proceed on the issue. They have now agreed that the total number of lawmakers in the assembly should remain at 300, but are at odds over how proportional representatives should be elected and how many seats should be given to them. The ruling Saenuri Party wants to cut the number of proportional representatives, while the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy is pushing for an increase as a way of preventing chronic regionalism. A public hearing on the matter is scheduled to be held on next Monday at the Assembly. The Constitutional Court ruled last year that the nation's electoral districts should be redrawn to address the unequal representation of votes due to population differences in each constituency. Rival party leaders attended a memorial Tuesday to mark the 6th anniversary of former President Kim Dae-jung's death. During the ceremony at the Seoul National Cemetery, the ruling party chief Kim Moo-sung called the late Kim a big leader who democratized South Korea with a firm will and praised his efforts to improve relations with North Korea. The main opposition party chief Moon Jae-in said that the late Kim will be remembered as the president who opened the door to reunification. Kim Dae-jung was South Korea's president from 1998 to 2003. While in office, he vigorously pushed for economic reforms as Seoul was in the midst of an economic crisis and also spearheaded engagement with Pyongyang under his so-called sunshine policy. Korea's leading business groups saw some poor figures in the first half of this year. Newly released data show that their combined profits fell by roughly a fifth on year. Some of the big wigs in the boardrooms of major companies like Samsung Electronics saw their paychecks drop as a result. Our Song Ji-sun reports.
Local market researcher Chaebol.com says the net profit of listed firms among Korea's top 10 business groups stood at $15 billion in the first half of this year. That's down 20% from the same period last year. Sales also dropped 8% to $263 billion. The slump was mainly due to slowing growth momentum in and out of Korea, and Samsung's disappointing figures, which accounted for more than half of the 10 groups' combined profits last year. Now that portion slid to just under 30%, with earnings dropping more than half to just $4.6 billion. While some others improved their profits, most of their sales dropped from a year earlier, showing a typical sign of recessive surplus. The market researcher also released figures that show board executives at Samsung Electronics saw their salaries drop in the first half of the year, following slumping smartphone sales. Samsung posted an 8% fall in its net profit in the second quarter amid lackluster results in its flagship smartphone business, despite the launch of ambitious new models. CEOs Shin Jong-gyun, Kwon Oh-hyun, and Yoon Bu-gun all received more than $1 million over the 6-month period, but their paychecks had more than halved on average. Shin topped the list for the most paid executive last year at $10 million, but lost that title to Yoo Kyung-sun, head of Eugene Group, who took home $13 million, including severance pay. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Korea's largest automaker, Hyundai Motor, will hire an extra 10,500 workers this year. Hyundai says it's creating an extra 1,000 openings in addition to the 9,500 new jobs it announced earlier this year. It will mark the first time Hyundai Motor has taken on more than 10,000 new workers in a year. The automaker said its recent decision to adopt a so-called wage peak system for its older employees enable it to take on the extra people. Hyundai says it will ask for active participation and cooperation from its affiliates. Global institutions expect China's growth to slow in the second half of the year despite devaluing its currency. Concerns are rising over how the slowdown could impact Korea. Kwon So-ah reports.
China reached its target of 7% growth in the first half of the year, but it's likely to fall short of that target in the second half. 15 major financial institutions are predicting an average rate of 6.9%. The IMF and OECD both forecast a rate of 6.8%. While there was some hope for a better outlook in the second half due to structural reforms within China's government, economic figures from last month show they didn't help much yet. Experts say China's slowdown is a result of policies focused on overinvestment and a surplus in stocks. And the real estate market, which is responsible for around 15% of the nation's growth, has been hit hard by the recent stock meltdown. Concerns are mounting slow second-half growth will have an impact on Korea, as it's highly dependent on Chinese exports. According to the Korea Development Institute, every 1 percentage point drop in growth in China could mean up to a 0.17 percentage point drop for Korea's growth. Hyundai Research Institute even estimates a fall of up to 0.4 percentage points.
China's slow growth is expected to continue next year too. That's why Korea should develop new industries or target China's domestic market with, for example, beauty products or Korean wave contents.
But some analysts say it's not going to be that serious.
A fall to the 6% range will not happen, even if it would affect Korea's stock market, but we already experienced that. And with exports already declining throughout the year, we don't expect too big of a shock.
If China's growth dips below 7%, it's going to be the lowest in a quarter of a century. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Shifting gears, the Thai capital of Bangkok is reeling after its deadliest bomb attack in years. Latest reports say at least 22 people have been killed and over 120 others injured. But still no word yet on who carried out the bloody attack. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
The bomb went off at a popular tourist spot in Bangkok on Monday evening local time, killing more than 20 people and wounding scores more. Authorities believe the attack was deliberate, aimed at destroying the country's economy, which relies on tourism for growth. So far, no one has claimed responsibility for the blast, which occurred at a city intersection close to the Hindu shrine of Erawan, an area packed with shopping centers and five-star hotels.
I heard the blast from my way to the hotel from the airport. It was very close to the shopping center.
The perpetrators intended to take away many lives because the incident occurred at 7 p.m. when many are gathered.
The Thai government has offered its condolences to the families of the victims. It also vowed to bring those responsible to justice.
The Prime Minister and the government would like to express our deepest condolences to the victims' families. The government insists that we will do everything in our power to investigate, with our utmost effort to bring those involved and who are behind all of this to be sentenced.
Media outlets suspect one of the country's political factions, including Muslim separatists in the southern part of Thailand, could have been responsible. The city intersection was the site of anti-government protests in 2010 by supporters of ousted former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra. Kim Jeon, Arirang News.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. More updates coming up at 10 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned and goodbye for now.